The moment I placed the carved wooden bowl on the dinner table, silence fell like a guillotine. My mother's eyes darted toward me with a kind of disdain usually reserved for criminals. "Why is she even here?" she said sharply, her voice slicing through the warmth of the dining room. "This dinner is for family, not failures." I froze, hand still extended toward the centerpiece I made myself. My fingers trembled slightly, but I didn't let them see. The whole family was there. My aunts, my uncles, cousins, neighbors I hadn't seen in years. And her, my mother, sitting like a self-appointed queen at the head of the table, right beside my perfect older sister, Vanessa, the medical prodigy, the charity darling, the family's golden star. And I was the stain on their tapestry. The girl who left college after one semester. The one who worked 2 jobs and lived in a shared apartment downtown, too proud to ask for help and too stubborn to explain why. My father, as usual, stayed quiet, choosing his silence over me. "Come on, Mom," Vanessa muttered with a rehearsed chuckle, gently patting her designer dress. "Don't embarrass her again." Again. As if it were some family sport. My mom scoffed louder this time, as if my presence personally offended her. "I'm not embarrassing anyone. I'm just speaking the truth. One daughter earns scholarships and brings honor to this family. The other one," she waved a hand at me like I was dust, "plays with pottery and lives like a squatter." People shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. A few avoided my eyes, others gave me pitying glances. My ears rang, but I forced my lips into a neutral line. I would not cry. Not again. Not in front of these people. I looked over at Grandma. She hadn't said a word all evening. She sat near the fireplace in her usual spot, her face half lit by the dancing flames, observing quietly like she always did. But now she stood. At 79, her movements were slow but deliberate. Her wrinkled hand reached into her cardigan pocket, and she shuffled toward me. Her eyes, sharp and gray like slate, fixed on mine. She didn't say a word, just held out a thin envelope, cream-colored, sealed with red wax. The moment I touched it, my mother's face tightened. "Mom, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "What is that?" Grandma didn't answer her. She just looked at me and whispered, "Not here. Open it in your room, sweet child." My fingers clenched the envelope tighter. The air in the room shifted, tense and electric. My mother's face began to pale. "Wait," she said, standing now too. "What are you giving her? What is in that?" I looked at her, truly looked at her, and, for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt still. And that stillness was louder than her entire speech. I turned and walked out, envelope pressed against my chest. My hands trembled as I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, the dim lamp casting soft shadows. I peeled the wax seal open, the crack echoing louder in my mind than it should have. Inside was a handwritten letter and a folded document. Under her to my dearest Ellie. If you're reading this, it means I've finally done what your mother never had the courage to. I've chosen you. I saw how they treated you. I saw your mother's jealousy the moment she realized you didn't need applause to have purpose. That you didn't perform for approval. That you worked quietly and with love. Enclosed is the deed to the lake house and 67% ownership in a certain account your mother doesn't know I set aside years ago. It's yours now. Use it wisely. Use it with kindness. Love, Grandma. _ The paper trembled in my hands. The deed was real. My name was typed clearly under the ownership field. I sucked in a breath, so sharp it hurt. Downstairs, I could hear my mother's voice rising. "What do you mean she gave her that? That house has been in our family for decades. I helped her take care of it. She can't give it to Ellie. She's a dropout." My grandma's calm voice answered. "She can. And she did. And what about Vanessa? She's the one who deserves everything. She already got everything she ever asked for," Grandma said coolly. "Ellie never asked for a thing." My mother gasped, as if the room had turned upside down. "She's manipulating you. She's playing victim." "No," Grandma replied. You just never noticed she was surviving. I stood at the top of the stairs, fingers clenched over the letter. I didn't want revenge. But maybe, just maybe, I wanted them to know I wasn't invisible anymore. I didn't sleep that night. The letter lay beside me on the bed, its words etched so deeply into my chest I could feel the ink pressing against my ribs. I kept rereading it, as if the meaning would change. As if the numbers, the percentages, the house deed, the signature would fade away. But they didn't. They were real. And so was the sudden weight of being seen after a lifetime of being invisible. By morning, the house was buzzing like a hornet's nest. I could hear voices arguing in hushed tones downstairs, but no one came to knock on my door.
Not until Grandma.
She tapped twice, then opened it herself, just like when I was little. Her frame looked frilier in the daylight, but her eyes were just as clear. She sat beside me, her fingers curling softly around mine. I should have done it earlier, she whispered, stroking my knuckles. But I was waiting for the right moment, for the right kind of strength in you. I don't understand, I said quietly. Why me? She smiled gently. Because you're the only one who knew how to survive without taking. And the one who never stopped giving, even when they had nothing left for you in return. Her words made my throat burn. You see people, Ellie. Really see them. And that's a rare kind of power. I couldn't speak. Besides, she added, her voice dipping lower, your mother, well, let's just say she was always afraid of the daughter who didn't need her approval. And fear turns into cruelty. I looked down at my lap. She hates me. She fears what she doesn't understand. And you are something she never learned to understand. I finally came down for breakfast, and every fork paused midair. My mother was mid-sentence when she saw me, her mouth clamped shut as if I'd walked in wearing a crown made of thorns. Vanessa didn't look at me. Neither did my father. But the others, they watched. Waiting to see if I'd explode. If I'd say something cruel. If I'd throw the envelope on the table and say, see, I win. But I didn't. I walked past the table, poured myself a cup of tea, and sat quietly on the windowsill, sunlight warming my back. And I said nothing. That silence burned more than 1,000 insults. Later that afternoon, as guests prepared to leave, my mother finally pulled me aside in the hallway. Her voice was low, sharp like broken glass. You think this makes you special? I looked at her, steady and calm.
No.
I don't think I'm special. Then what? You're just going to play the victim until people give you things. The way she twisted it, always twisting things, made me feel like a child again. I didn't ask for anything, I said. You know that. She took a step closer. Her lipstick was perfect. Her mascara hadn't budged. She was supposed to give that house to Vanessa. She didn't. You don't even have a real career, Ellie. You make bowls. I make art. My mother scoffed. No, you make excuses. And then she leaned in, her voice dripping venom. You will never amount to anything. That was when Grandma walked around the corner, slow but sharp-eyed. Her cane hit the floor with deliberate rhythm. Enough, Margaret, she said. My mother spun. She needs to hear the truth. No, Grandma said. You do. She pointed her cane toward her daughter, not me, and her voice trembled not with weakness, but with fury barely contained. You've spent a lifetime mistaking loudness for strength. But Ellie has a quiet kind of strength that could move mountains without anyone even noticing. I raised her. My mother shot back. I know who she is. You didn't raise her, Grandma whispered. You broke her. And she still grew. That night, I drove back to the city with the deed in my purse and Grandma's words wrapped around my heart like armor. I didn't feel like I'd won, but I felt like I finally knew who I was. And I knew this. I wasn't going to stay in the shadows anymore. The city looked different that night. Or maybe I did. The traffic lights glowed softer. The buildings didn't seem to tower over me like they used to. And even the wind that usually whipped through my coat, like cold fingers, now felt quieter. Less cruel. I parked outside my apartment, the same crumbling brick building with a flickering hallway light and the neighbors who never smiled back. But tonight, I didn't walk in like a girl carrying shame on her shoulders. Tonight, I walked in like someone who had finally been seen. I didn't tell my roommate right away. I didn't need to. Jenna took one look at my face when I walked in and set her phone down. "Okay," she said slowly. "You either won the lottery or you found a suitcase full of mob money." I smiled. The first real one in weeks. Neither. But something changed. She raised a brow. "Do I get to hear it?" I held up the envelope. Let's just say my grandmother handed me back the pieces I thought I lost forever. Over the next week, I didn't quit my job. I didn't flaunt anything. I still woke up early to work at the ceramic studio. Still wiped paint off my arms with cheap towels. Still packed sandwiches in reused tinfoil. But something had shifted. I walked straighter. My hands stopped trembling. And I began something I hadn't done in a long time. I planned. For years, I had worked in that studio under the thumb of a snide manager who called my art cute and paid me barely enough to breathe. But now, with the funds Grandma had entrusted to me, I began mapping out something bigger, something that could outlive the shadows I grew up in. A studio of my own. A place for artists like me. Quiet ones. Overlooked ones. The ones who didn't have parents clapping in the front row, but still dared to dream. And then came the letter. Not an email. Not a call. A handwritten letter with elegant cursive on a thick envelope. Vanessa. I opened it slowly, half expecting venom. But instead, it was hollow. _Ellie. I heard what Grandma did. I suppose congratulations are in order. I don't understand it, not really. But if it makes you feel like you've won, then I hope it helps. Mom isn't speaking to anyone right now. She says you've embarrassed her. Dad just keeps shaking his head. I guess I just wanted to say, I don't get it. Vanessa _ No apology. No kindness. Just confusion masquerading as civility. I placed it in a drawer. Some wounds didn't bleed. They just left bruises deep enough to remember. Weeks passed. And then something unexpected happened. I got an email from a gallery owner, a real one. Professional.
Known.
She said she'd seen my latest collection online through a local contest I didn't even know Jenna entered me in. She wanted to meet. That afternoon, standing in her minimalist gallery space lined with white light and silence, she studied my work like it was something holy. "This," she said, holding a curved ceramic vessel with swirls of deep blue, "this feels like grief turned into music." I swallowed hard. That piece is called Mother's Silence.
She didn't ask. She didn't need to.
She turned and smiled gently. "I'd like to feature your collection next month. If you're ready." I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. A week before the exhibit, I returned to the lake house. It stood just as I remembered, wooden, creaky, surrounded by birch trees and the slow hum of cicadas. My breath hitched the moment I stepped inside. The smell of Grandma's old soap. The blankets she crocheted. The tea tins she always kept in alphabetical order. I spent the whole night cleaning, painting, touching every corner like it was a goodbye and a beginning all at once. And while I was folding laundry in the guest room, I found an old, rusted tin box under the bed. Inside, photos, letters,
Clippings.
and a note addressed to me, in Grandma's shaky handwriting. "One day, you'll need proof that your story didn't begin with rejection. It began with resilience. Here is every time I saw you survive without applause. Every moment you thought no one noticed. I did. I always did." Tears burned through me. They didn't fall. They rushed, like a storm finally breaking open. She had kept everything. My first art show flyer from high school. The poem I wrote after my first heartbreak. A tiny thank you note from a child whose class I once taught during summer. And then, folded behind it all, was a bank document. A quiet transfer. Months before her death. She had already moved the funds in my name. No performance. No announcement. Just trust. The night before the gallery debut, I walked alone to the edge of the lake, wrapped in a sweater 2 sizes too big and memories 10 years too heavy. The moonlight shimmered across the surface, like liquid silver. I whispered, "I hope I make you proud." The wind answered with silence. But it was the kind of silence that held peace, not absence. The gallery opening buzzed with quiet excitement. People wandered between the white walls, sipping wine, murmuring over the pieces. My name was printed in gold on the program. Ellie Grayson, The Weight of Quiet Things. And then I saw them. My mother, my father, Vanessa. They walked in like they owned the room, until they saw the crowd around me. My mother's smile tightened. This is yours. I nodded.
Calm.
Centered. Yes. Vanessa looked at the ceramic series lined along the wall, each one titled after feelings I never spoke aloud. Invisible. Overlooked.
Bruised.
Surviving. Vanessa whispered. These are about us. They're about me, I corrected softly. My mother gave a hollow laugh. This is your little revenge? No, I said. This is my healing. Before she could speak again, the gallery owner stepped in. There she is, the woman of the night, she smiled, looping her arm through mine. The critics are already asking when her next exhibit is. My mother blinked. Critics? A woman nearby chimed in. Your daughter's story is incredible. It's not just art, it's truth. That word echoed like thunder. Later, Grandma's old friend, a retired journalist, walked over and handed me a letter. She wrote this for tonight. Said to give it only if they came. I opened it slowly. Underscore to Margaret and Vanessa. If you're here, it means Ellie finally stood where I always knew she belonged, in her light. She didn't need you to believe in her, but I hoped you'd live long enough to witness her. Now you have. Underscore. I looked up. For once, my mother had no words. Vanessa turned away, wiping her cheek. My father quietly said, we were wrong. And I answered, I know. That night, as the gallery lights dimmed, I stepped outside. Not bitter. Not triumphant. Just free. A month passed. The gallery exhibit ended, but something bigger had begun. I signed a lease for a small, sunlit space near the edge of the city. Not just for me, but for others like me.
People who'd been dismissed.
Ignored. Overlooked. The quiet studio. A place where silence didn't mean weakness. One morning, while unpacking clay tools, the bell above the door chimed. I turned. It was Vanessa. No perfect hair. No expensive coat. Just her, looking real. She held a tiny ceramic bowl I'd made as a kid, one I thought was lost. I kept this, she said quietly. It reminded me of you. I blinked, unsure what to say. I was always scared of you, she admitted. Not because you were weak, but because you were strong in ways I didn't understand. She placed the bowl on the table gently. You didn't need the spotlight. You built your own warmth. I exhaled slowly. I never hated you, you know. She smiled. I know. Weeks later, I visited Grandma's grave. I brought wildflowers, not roses. She hated roses. I did it, Grandma, I whispered. And I didn't burn bridges. I just walked across them, finally. The wind rustled through the trees.
Soft.
Gentle, like a hand brushing my shoulder. And back in the city, in my studio, I hosted a community night. A young girl with shaky hands handed me her first sculpture, crooked, messy, full of heart. It's not perfect, she said, eyes down. I knelt beside her and smiled. Neither am I. But here, we don't need perfect. We just need real.